Hey gang, Anthony Curran here. Today we're going to talk about what are index funds. So an index fund is basically a fund that follows the patterning of an index. I'm sure that you've heard of the Dow. People have talked about that and maybe you don't know what it is. That's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And what that is an index which takes about 30 of the biggest companies in the country and puts them together and then measures how those companies are performing on a day-to-day basis. And the congregate score of that is what we measure as the Dow. So an index fund is something that copies an index like the Dow or the S&P 500 or any of those kind of things. So the reason that we like index funds is that they're what is known as a passively traded fund. What that means is there's not a lot of active investing, meaning there's not a lot of buying and selling and buying and selling and constant turnover in the fund. It should be relatively passive, meaning they buy it and hold it. The benefit to you, the investor, is because it's not being traded back and forth, there's less tax money being paid at the end of the year, which means there hypothetically should be less expense, which means you should be keeping more of the money that you're investing instead of having to pay an expense to the trading company that handles the fund for you. Now, a lot of prominent investors believe in the power of index funds, especially if you're not somebody who wants to make a career out of trading on the different markets. Warren Buffett, Tony Robbins, Mark Cuban, all of these very successful, intelligent people believe in the power of index funds as a great investment strategy for folks. Um, Part of it is that passive trading, which means you're not spending as much money. Another part of it is the fact that these index funds should match an index that's relatively successful, and that index is generally going to be comprised of companies that are doing pretty well. Obviously, the Dow, for example, takes some of the biggest, best companies and puts them all together. So investing in an index fund is a great tool, especially if you're not investment minded and you'd like to get a good return on your investment, but you don't quite know what you want to do. Another great thing about index funds is that they're diversified. So, diversification just means instead of putting all your eggs into one basket, you put one egg into each basket. That way, if one basket breaks, you're still good. So, what I mean by that, instead of investing a bunch of money into one company and then, knock on wood, that company goes bankrupt. Instead, you take a smaller investment in a bunch of different companies, and then if one of them goes bankrupt, you're losing less money than if you would put everything into the one company. So index funds are great because they are diverse, they are passively traded, and depending on how close that fund matches the index that it's patterned after, they can generally give you a very good return on your investment. Now, obviously, not every index fund is going to be dollar per dollar matched up to the index that it's patterned after, but at the very least, it'll give you a pretty close approximation to how an index is doing. So, especially if you believe in a particular group of companies, it's a good idea to consider an index fund as a potential investment vehicle. Now, obviously, an index fund isn't a guaranteed money maker. Some index funds lose money over time, some have bad years, some have bad decades. So, just like any other type of investment, it's not a guarantee. However, like I said before, the diversification and the passive investing mean that generally it might be better than putting all of your money into a single stock or bond or something of that nature. Of course, you can consult your financial planner or advisor, and I certainly recommend that. If you're interested in learning more about index funds and learning about specific funds that your broker or CFP might have for sale or to help you to get into. If you have any questions, please give me a email. It's anthonytcurran@gmail.com. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much. Hope everybody learned a little bit today, and we'll see you next time.